Hi, I made a YouTube video about 2 years about modding the English Muffin, and I just want to revisit this topic. Right now, I want to reopen it because I always find myself putting the treble really low. And to give myself a little bit more range on the treble, I just want to reopen it and adjust a couple of things I had done. So, first thing, when you open this thing, there's around 300 volts inside, but there's a bleeding resistor that it's going to quickly discharge. If you look right here, this is a 100K bleeding resistor. So the minute you turn off the device, within maybe 2 minutes or something, it's going to gradually go down, But a good practice is to make yourself a little clip like this. Mine has a 2.7K resistor, and you'll just ground the clip, and you'll just go around, um, poking all the spots where you see a big capacitor like this, So you got a bunch of them right here too, with their. I already checked this one, but this is a really good thing to make. You just go around poking all the plus and minuses of all the big capacitors, and you know that it's dead. And to make sure, you will use your voltmeter also to make sure. Okay, so now these are easy to undo. In my first video, I don't really show how to dismantle this thing, although it's pretty obvious. I'm just going to do it. Well, while we do this, I'm just going to talk about the original circuit. Before you go opening this thing apart, the original circuit isn't bad at all. And I think the real problem in the original is only that the voltage is a little bit too low, in the preamp, the more you lower the voltage, just like Van Halen did with his Variac, he would lower, it's a machine that controls the AC voltage going to a device, and he would connect his amp in a Variac and lower the voltage to the entire amp. So as you lower the voltage to an amp, to tubes in general, they will distort more, but they will lose dynamics and the richness that we associate with the sound of tubes, So the first thing, which I think I mentioned in the first video, is how the schematic calls for a 14-volt AC adapter. But what you get is a 12-volt AC adapter. So right there, when you speak to electric engineers, it's very common that they wrote something down, but eventually some bean counters in the company decide to revise some of the things and change things, So I'm not really sure why, but under load, the original adapter gives 12.8. So we're still short of the 14-volt AC, you see? So before you start doing all sorts of things in the pedal, just finding a 14-volt AC adapter that gives just maybe 1 or 2 volts more really goes a long way. Me personally, I settled for an adapter which under load is at a 15.1 volt AC. So before we even open this and everything, just talking about this, there's one important problem you might run into is that the big power capacitors inside this, when they've seen, let's say you're going to use a capacitor that's rated at 400 volts, but you only put 300 volts on it. And after 10 years, you put a higher voltage, like 330 instead of 300, it's going to go up in smoke quite often, because if you read about electrolytic capacitors, after a certain amount of years, their rating kind of lowers to what they're used to take. And if you go a little higher, even if it's under their actual rating, they're going to go up in smoke. So personally, I changed the big power capacitors in it. Well, these two, not this one, because it held fine, but I wanted to change the value of this one, these two under. So that's one thing that could happen if you use a higher voltage adapter. They won't explode or anything, but as you probably know, electrolytic capacitors, they're gonna split on the plus and they're gonna leak, or they can even smoke a little bit too. So that's about it. But if they, you see, this thing was done, it was built in 2004, so it's already more than 15 years ago. So I'm not sure how they would do, but anyway, mine held just fine. So I'm just saying, be ready to change those because they could fry. All right. I'm just gonna read my note, make sure I don't miss anything. So yeah, now just to talk about how it is stock before starting to mod it. Like I said in the first video, what's interesting, what I find interesting about this is that it's really like a JCM 800 preamp, 3 gain stages. And then the fourth one is a cathode follower going to the EQ. And they're really just in the same kind of architecture as the good JCM 800 model 2203. And this opens a million possibilities. There's hundreds of mods for the JCM 800 online. But just stock, the way it is stock, it kind of reminds me of a Marshall Super Bass. On the first stage, you have a really big I was just searching for the correct words in English. You have a really big bypass cathode capacitor, fairly small cathode resistor, making this gain stage really bassy and gainy, but kind of dark. If you have a bigger cathode resistor, the stage runs colder and it's kind of brighter and cleaner. So it's kind of like how a plexi has 2 gain stages, but the 2 first are like, if you bypass the channel, both run into the second stage. So one's going to control the treble, one's going to control the bass. So this is a little bit like you put the 3 gain stage. If you put a super bass but put a second gain stage and just ran into the bass channel. Anyway, they were trying to make a tube big muff. So I kind of understand what they were trying to do, but the mods I put in make it sound more like a classic Marshall amp. That's what I'm aiming for, just a classic Marshall tone. So all right, let's keep opening this thing. These knobs are really difficult to open. You need flat screwdrivers usually. Then you gently twist, and they so difficult to pop out. Oh Incredible. And you want to be careful not to scratch your faceplate there. So you hear the aluminum ripping, but it's ripping kind of under where the knobs are. So yeah, the hands plus a little help from the screwdriver, I think it's the best. Damn. Okay, I'm gonna pause the video here. Just freak. Just gonna put them aside. I'm gonna pause this. Okay. So when you start applying mods, you don't want to change 20 things and then try your pedal again, because what will happen sometimes is that, oops, the pedal doesn't work anymore. And you have to like undo the 20 something changes you applied, and it's a freaking nightmare. So the best is to you change one thing, or just like a subgroup of things, and you try your pedal again and make sure it works, because it can be a huge rabbit hole undoing like everything you did and redoing things one by one just to find out if you had a bad component, or if something just didn't go right. So I recommend you test every component before you put it in. Like, you don't even put in a resistor or a capacitor without testing it. So you don't even start this if you don't have a voltmeter with all these functions. I realized I think I forgot to tighten these things from the last time there. The bottom 3 ones are loose. There's a screw right under here in the middle that needs to be, oh, it's loose too. Needs to be undone if you want this entire board to come down. Almost done, almost done. And this too. Okay. It's always easier said than done. Always. So what's holding us back? Okay. This diode is gonna pop out. I'll remember what I did 2 years ago. Let's apply some force. Come on, what's going on? Oh. Maybe the top. Oh, here we go. Come on. It's like, what is it? What's the matter? Okay. Oh boy. Okay. So this little star thingy there went right here. I'm just gonna put this back here. There we go. Is that screwdriver magnetized? It is. Not magnetized strong enough though. Oh. Mm-hmm. God. Okay. So now that's the manual part, but there's the intellectual part. What do we want to do with this circuit? This is the basic JCM 800 schematic, and on the basics edge, one of the first things you see is a much higher cathode resistor, a much smaller cathode bypass capacitor. This is going to be a much brighter gain stage. And why do you want a bright first gain stage? Because when you have a high gain preamp, if you have a bassy first gain stage, it's going to be really mushy. Every high gain amp, if you look at high gain amps, you'll never see a large bypass capacitor and small, 845 ohms resistor. You later down the circuit, you're gonna use bigger values to like recoup the bass, but early on you want a bright first input. So if you want to bring this toward a JCM 100 circuit, look, in my first video, this is what I was showing. It's a little bit confusing because it looks like I changed like 50 different parts, and you're thinking, wow, it's a huge mod. I'm not sure I'm up to it. And look, I recommend you just change a couple of things at a time and see how you like it, okay? And also, two very important other things too is that the JCM 800 is not really that much of a gain amp. A lot of things have happened since then, and there are some better 3-gain stage circuits that have happened since. And one of my favorite ones is the Marshall JCM 900, but not the dual master volume model. The 2100 model. Oh yeah, this amp sounded so good. It had a lot more gain than the JCM 800, but it's still the same architecture. The reason I talk about this amp is because you can't use just any amp. You need to use one that has pretty much the same architecture. Otherwise, you'll need to just rewire so many things. Like for example, the JCM 900 dual reverb. It doesn't have 3-gain stage and then an EQ. It has integrated circuits. It has transistors. It has a bunch of non-tube things. There's nothing good to get looking at those circuits. So the 2100 JCM 900 is a great preamp circuit to base some mods on. And another great circuit that I really like is the top hat amplexador. And this, I did mention that in the first video, so I'm not going to ramble on too much on the top hat amplexador. I have a simplified version of their schematic that I made here because on their circuit, he switches in the second gain stage. So it's kind of more complicated to look at. This is like the simplified version, you know, where you see all three gain stage, bang, 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 you see? So like I said, so one of the first things I did in, let's start with the first gain stage right away. So what do we see here? The first thing I will remove is this huge 220 microfarad, you know, C1, simply C1 and R4. These are the two first that I would change. And if we look at the top hat amplexador and the Marshall 2100, you see they both chose the same value as the basic JCM 800, 0.68 N capacitor and a 2.7K cathode resistor. So that's a safe value because, you know, let's just get rid of a couple of things here. You know that the basic JCM 800 has those values, has that value, and classic amps are using that. So that's a good way to, good place to start, you know. Second thing I would do is maybe reduce a little bit the, hold on a second. So the plate resistor at 110K, you can leave it. It's not the, it's fine. The C2 here, this decouples the AC signal from the DC voltage on the plate of that stage. And 22N, if you look at the Marshall, Marshall kept the, oh no, hold on. You see the 2100 went 10N, half that. The JCM 800 is at 22. But let's check the top hat amplexador. The top hat amplexador went really small, like 2.2, and that's quite small. I think 10N would be a pretty cool value. Let's see what I did here. Everything that I circled, it means that I changed it. So let's see. C2, where is C2? What did I do to C2? Oh, I didn't see anything. So look, if I circled it, it's because I did something to it. It happens that I didn't note it, but I would go to like 10N. But like I said, everything we change, you want to test and see if you like it, you know. And then the way things go around the gain pot, where you see the JCM 800 here has, yeah, it's like the JCM 800, so you can leave that part the same. We can go straight to the second gain stage. This cathode resistor, these are all right. I left them. They're a little bit different than my favorite values, which are 4.7K, 0.68, 3.3 is kind of small. Let me see, did I change it? R10. Yeah, I changed R10 to 4.7K. This makes a pretty clean stage, pretty clean stage here. And if you look at the JCM 800, the basic JCM 800 on the second stage, it has a 10K resistor. So that's a very clean, very clean second stage. I'll just put the cat outside, give me a second. So you see in my case, I put the 470K, 470P combo after the first and second stage before the gain pot. I'm sorry, after, because stock there before. And when I used a mod amp like 15 years ago, my test showed that after sounded better like the top hat amplexador. But in this I tried, and it didn't seem to change anything. So I would say don't bother changing that. And then let's move on to the second stage. Like I said, R10, I would put a 4.7 because 3.3 would be a little small. Depends how bad you want gain or how you want the preamp to sound a little more natural. Now, what we usually see is a fairly small decoupling capacitor on the first gain stage, and then they get bigger on the second. But see, this one they put a big one on the first, well, not big, but kind of a normal one, and a small one on the second. So C4, what did I put on C4? I put a 0.15 with it to add up to make it bigger. So 0.15, it pretty much adds up to 0.20 to 22N. Because if we compare with other amps, you see this one here, what do they have? They had a 10 on the first and a 22 nanofarad on the second. Let's see what Top Hat and Plexador did. No, let's see what JCM 800 did. JCM 800 has 22 on both. But let's see what Top Hat and Plexador did. Really small on the first, and then after 22N. So I think it's safe to say, like, everybody else has a 22N here, so it's safe to say you can change C4 to 22N. After that, well, the first example we need to look, I think, is always the basic JCM 100, and then check what others did. And then C8, again, the 500 something K and 470p combo. What these do is sort of put a pedal brake on the whole signal, but let higher frequencies go straight through. So if you remove that, it's going to cut down a bunch of treble. So you see C6, I totally chopped it off. Because what? Because see, the JCM 800 does have a 470p and 470K combo here before the third gain stage. I don't remember why I removed it. Probably because it sounded too bright. Let's see what others do. So after the second gain stage, you see the Top Hat and Plexador does not have the 470p, only the 470K. So it does not allow a bunch of high frequencies to go straight through to the next gain stage. And let's see what 2100 Marshall does. It does have, but a higher capacitor, 2N2. This is totally a mid-range group of frequencies that's allowed straight. But, so yeah, we're almost done, but, and then what else? The third gain stage. You see it has a pretty big, compared to JCM 800, a really big cathode bypass capacitor. What does a cathode bypass capacitor do? It boosts frequencies. So let's say any gain stage, if you add a cathode bypass capacitor, it's going to make the gain stage run hotter and boost a certain frequency depending on what value it has. So 3.3 microfarads is a big value. So this would be a very bassy, but clean third gain stage with 3.3K cathode resistor. So what does the JCM 800 have? The JCM 800 on the third gain stage, it doesn't have a cathode bypass cap, but only a very small 820 ohm resistor, making it kind of hot running bassy stage. What does this one have? Same value resistor as the JCM 800. That's the Top Hat and Plexador, but it does have a cathode bypass capacitor, boosting kind of high mid-range at 0.68. Marshall 2100 has 1.5K. That's a very smart value. because at the JCN 800 with small value like this, it's gonna make that tube stage wear kind of faster than all the others. This tube on this side is gonna wear out quicker. It runs it kind of pretty hot. So that's a pretty cool value. Let's see what I did last time, 2 years ago. What did I do? R15, what did I do? I put 820 ohms, just like the JCN 800. And did I leave the cathode bypass cap? C7, what did I do to C7? I probably removed it. I cannot imagine. Okay, I changed it to 1 microfarad. All right, so after that, what else? The plate resistors are very high. You see high plate resistors on high gain amps because, like I said, they drop the voltage that each stage is going to receive. And that's not a good idea on this to have a lot higher than 100K because you already don't have as much voltage as real full-size tube amps. And what did I do to R9 and R14? Let's see. I definitely changed them. I just don't remember. R14 I put 110 instead of 160. And R9 I also put 110. I think I didn't have any. When you work with tube amps, you use a lot of 100Ks, and I ran out of them. That's why I put 110. So that will lower the gain, but bring back the real tube sound. You know, if the voltage is too low, you might as well just use a transistor pedal because you lose all the dynamics of the tube. It starts sounding just grainy and crappy. I did change some things in the EQ. The C10, the EQ's treble cap. It was the value of a Marshall Super Bass and the value of a lot of Fenders too. I changed it to a regular Marshall value. C11 too, I changed that to 0.022. That's the regular Marshall value. And at 0.1, it really changed the curve of the EQ and made it kind of much bassier. The mid pot too. And on a Marshall, it's not 10K, it's 22K. And let's see what others did too. Yeah, everybody used a 22